command, but sometimes this happens. It's really strange. If anyone understands why, and it only seems to happen in these types of applications, create React apps specifically. So we don't get any coverage there. Let's just take a look what's going on. So we have the coverage threshold. So we have Jest configured. We're collecting the coverage threshold, the coverage reporters. Let's see. I'm trying to think what we're missing here. We have testing library, which is good. Now, why are they sat in there? I have no idea why it does that. It seems to be. Let's see. Let's put them there. Okay. So dependencies, let's just clear those up because you don't want. I don't know why it includes dependency, dev dependencies in the dependencies, because testing libraries shouldn't ever go into your main bundle. So we're using testing library React. Jest on, we don't really care about all the user events. Just do a quick yarn install here. Okay, you're already up to date. So if I just do yarn test, quit filter to trigger a test run. Show more. Strange, very strange. Oh, I am being an absolute idiot. Create a new folder called __test __. And then just to get one triggered, let's do a quick one. What quick test could we do here? Now, there's some real complex tests, especially when it comes to just user interactions. And I'm going to turn snapshots on too. I feel like snapshots are fairly good in this scenario. So let's take a look. We'll close this down. So the accordion, right? We could start with the accordion. Let's just create a new file, and we'll do one for maybe the player. Yeah, let's just test the player. So we'll do player.test.js. Close that down. Import React. Import React, please. There we go. Import render fire event from testing library React. And then you want to go ahead and import the player from the components. And we'll get that from components. Let's make sure you got 2 folders. And then we can say describe, and we'll say player. And then we'll say it renders the player with a bunny video. Why is this? Unable to resolve path. Let's create a test for components. We'll shove this in here. Okay, then we can create another folder for snapshots. Let's see. Components. Yes, okay. And then in here, we can just do const container get by text. Actually, why am I pulling in container here? Get by text, query it by test ID, and we can use both of those to query. Actually, mainly container, because we want to check the first child. So we can do render. We'll render the player.button, player.video. I'll pass the source of videos bunny.mp4. Now, this here is individually testing the unit of this component. Now, you could run the test on the page and pick up the coverage, and we can probably do that as well, just so I can show you both ways, because this way I don't really feel is that useful. Test the component, yes. Now, if you're running a design library, this is perfect because you're testing your components, but when you want to test the application, you know, sway more towards integration and end-to-end tests, because you'll get more coverage, more, user-like testing scenarios. So we'll set expect query by test ID player to be falsy. So we need to add a test ID or fire event. Click get by text. We'll look for the text of player. And then we'll come down here. We can pretty much just copy these. Once that has been clicked, we can check that it's truthy, that the player is showing. And then we can check that if we go ahead and fire that once more, we expect it to be falsy because it's going to close. And then we expect container.firstChild to match snapshot. So we want to open up the player here. And what was we looking for? Data test ID of player, right? So we want to check that the player has a data test ID. So we need to go into the player, which should be here on the overlay. And we can say data test ID equals player. Now if I run the test, yarn test, probably not going to work, probably will, we'll see. There we go, finally we have something. Let's see. Oh, we have errors. Nothing was returned from render. This usually means a render statement is missing or it's null. Okay, that's fine. Let's close that down and just take a look at our test. So we render the player button, the video, we hit expect query to be falsy. I know it's telling me that this is wrong immediately. The fire event looks fine. We get the player from the components, so that should be there. Yes, because we're heading into the components immediately. Well, we know the tests are running at least, which is good. Player to be falsy. We click the fire event. Let's see. I wonder why that's dying. It's if nothing's being returned from here. But I'm sure it is. Let me just run that one more time. Yarn test. Maybe the snapshot got created as well. We need to check that. What? Zoom out. Renders a player with a bunny video. So we get the container, get by text, query by test ID. Why is that wrong? Get by text. And the player's coming through. So what we can do, we can debug this, throw a debug statement in there. And let's see. I know it's probably going to fail, but let's just call debug. I want to see what's being rendered into the I doubt it's going to give me anything. Yeah, it's just going to fail. I mean, we'll have some coverage. Nothing was returned from render. I'm struggling to believe this. How could nothing be returned from the render? Because when you come into the player, you get the player context, right? So why would you not get anything? You have the state. Renders the player. So we get the container. Get by test ID. Query by test ID. Let me see. We get the player.button, the player.video. Did we get a snapshot? No, we didn't. So because it didn't get down here, it's failing on the render. It seems like something strange is happening here. Okay, so I've just looked into that issue quickly, and it seems to be React scripts. I did a quick search on Google, and there was this person who said if you downgrade from 3.4x or whatever it may be down to 340 or 41 or 40, I think it was. We're on 3.4.3. If we downgrade to 0, go ahead, run yarn install, and then do yarn test, it passes. So it passes, and if you check in here, you get, where's the player? 70/50, okay. So you get most coverage. So to get the full coverage, uncomment this. We need container in here because it'll fail. And then we should have some coverage. It's strange, revealing finder, Netflix, coverage, and then we can open this up. And then if we take a look at the player, we get set show player false. So let me make that bigger. Hopefully you can see that. 91%. Now if I rerun this again, just run yarn test, it should give me 100% now that we've got the code back in there of activating the fire event. Or maybe not. So is it not set show player false? I'm clicking on player. So why is that not working? We should have 100% there. So what we do, we expect to find the player by the test ID to be false here. So the player isn't open to begin with. So we click on the event of player, which is the button. Then we go and find the player again, and that should be true because it's now open. We then close by clicking the fire event click, get by text player. Oh, no, that shouldn't be that. That should be query by test ID. We click on the player, so it clicks on the outer, which will allow it to close, and expects it to be false here, which should give us 100%. Boom, there we go. So that's the first component tested. If we just take a look at coverage, we've got quite a long way to go. But we can burn through this. I feel like when we start testing, if we test all the components, let's get the components done, and then we can start looking at the containers, helpers, and other things like that. Source, app. Do I really want to test the app? I don't feel like that's necessary, to be honest. I mean, what are we testing here? Let's see. I mean, what would we even be testing? I mean, just mocking out the user auth listener and passing a user down. Just doesn't seem necessary, really. I never really test the app.js unless I'm doing some external calls. So I'm going to go into the package.js in here and just ignore app from the coverage. Like so. And do yarn test, and that should go. So I'll look. Okay. All files. Okay, so that's gone. So we're stood at 40% at the minute. Constants, that'll easily get tested, so I'm not going to hide that one. The roots. Now the roots should get somewhat tested. But it seems unnecessary to even test that because from my view, we can easily test it manually. I don't want to get in this routine of just testing for testing's sake here. Like, I know these work. But I mean, you could be covering code, and if someone changed something, it should catch them out. I think we should probably test that. What else can we test? We can basically just render that component, pass it some props, and we can see what gets returned. You could even check if you get redirected, or at least an attempt to be redirected. But I don't want to get too much into the implementation details. I don't like testing implementation details that much. I prefer to, interact with what's on the screen itself. The footer is going to be an annoying one to do because we're going to have to render the footer out, which isn't going to be nice to do, to be honest. Should we just do it now quickly? Okay, let's quickly do the footer, and then I guess I'll be back tomorrow. Footer.test.js, import React, import render from testing React, import the footer from components, describe, and we'll just set footer. Now I'm going to cheat here and just say it renders the footer with populated data. And then what you can do here, just say const container get by text equals render. And then what you can do, go into your footer container, just grab all of this, copy it, paste it in, and then let's do some assertions. So down here, do expect, actually not here, there. Expect get by text questions, contact us. And we're basically just testing the UI components here. It's not that great, in all honesty. I'd kind of want to test it from, I'm just not a fan of doing, it's not that I'm not a fan of doing unit tests, it's just I much prefer doing integration tests where you get, stuff touching other components and working together. As you can see here, I'm basically dumping out the UI and saying, here you go, this is what I expect you to do. And then I'm just making assertions, and it seems, I don't know, it seems fairly trivial. It doesn't give me that much confidence. Integration tests are much better in my opinion. And now it's just snapshot it. I mean, it could be good for a snapshot, I guess, but if someone comes and changes this, and to be honest, I don't even use snapshots that much when I do testing. Generally what I'll do, I'll leave them. I'm a big fan of Cypress at the minute, but I still like React Testing Library to some extent. Corporate information, does that not exist? I spell it wrong. That is just my issue. I need to go back to school, learn how to spell. Okay, let's have a look. Let's see what I can get on the coverage on the footer. Should pass, hopefully. One snapshot written, so we can check our snapshots. And in snapshots, we have a footer. There we go, we have a Jest snapshot. And then for the player, we should have one also. There we are. Cool. And you see, it renders out the styled component class, which is a bit strange. We can get rid of debug in there now because I know that works. And let's see what coverage we got. 100%. So fairly easy to test UI components, but when we start getting into mocking, it gets a little more complex. Okay, so 45%. Let's try get that above 80. Maybe we'll go for 100. Who knows? Okay, so we'll test maybe the accordion next. Let's look at maybe testing the accordion. Right, so let's go ahead and test the accordion. So I don't think we need the browser anymore because we pretty much have achieved what we set out, which was these pages for our Netflix clone. And yeah, we don't really need it. So we can just go full width with our VS Code. Let's see. So close all this down. We can keep package.json open for now. We may make some modifications. Head over to tests. Then with inside the components, go ahead, new file, call this accordion.test.js. Import React. Import render fire event from testing library React. And then we're going to need the FAQs data, so we'll get that next. Fixtures, FAQs. And then what we need is the accordion. So we'll get the accordion. I wonder if I can just put that there then say from components. Let's see. Oops, there we go. Let's see if I can just say accordion. Yeah, it picks it up. Okay, so let's just say we're gonna test the accordion. It renders the accordion with populated data. And then we'll use the container, so we can use a snapshot, get by text. And then we need to render the accordion with inside here. So let's just do a search for accordion and we can steal that pretty much. Here we go. So we can go ahead and we can get the accordion. So accordion.item. Why is that in there? That's strange. Yeah, that doesn't look right. Just make sure that's not in there. Right, so we can test the accordion. Let's just go ahead, grab this. Paste it in here. We don't need the opt form. We can test that later. Put the accordion inside, and then we can basically map over from FAQs data. So if we run the test, let's have a look. Accordion. There's no assertions at the moment, but I just wonder if it goes over. Yeah, so you get 86. So I wonder what's missing. Flip over to the accordion. Set toggle. Alright, so let's make some assertions here. So we need an on click, so we're going to fire an event so we can toggle the show, and then we can toggle the body. Let's go across. Cool. So if we come down here, pull this up, do expect, get by text, what we're looking for, frequently asked questions. And we'll set to be truthy. The next one, we can test what is Netflix. It's basically just testing what's in that file, and we can see if it's coming through. How much does Netflix cost? Where can I watch? And then how do I cancel? What can I watch on Netflix? Okay, so we're just doing a basic test here, then we can get the snapshot, just to make sure it doesn't change. First child dot to match snapshot. Okay, that looks good. And then we can now go ahead and do some assertions around opening and closing. Opens and closes the accordion component. So what we can do here, we can just be a bit cheeky and we can steal this once more. You could even do your assertions above, but I just feel like it's a separate test case, so it's fairly nice to go ahead and check for this. So what we want to do, we do want to pass somewhat of a body to this. So I'm just going to paste in some Netflix is a streaming service, blah, 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 blah. This, if we just search for it, exists in here in the body, so you can just take it from there. Let's have a look. You could even pull it from the FAQs file, so you're being consistent, and if it changes, it doesn't really matter. We'll do expect query by text. What is Netflix body text? To be false here, because we haven't clicked on anything yet. And then we can do a fire event dot click query by text. What is Netflix? And then we can get this and just flip it to be truther. To be truther. And just make sure this is to be false. Likewise with the ones above, just make sure, yeah, to be truther, to be truther, to be truther. Cool. That's just basically checking for the headers. What did we pull out here? Get by text? Nope. We want query by text. And there's different ways or mechanisms as to how query and get by text work. If you're not familiar with React Testing Library, I think if you do, we'd have to check the semantics, but one of them basically, and I remember doing this in the Todoist video, one will bomb out and one will continue the test iteration. It will allow it to run. So if it doesn't exist, then it's going to throw a paddy. If it does exist, that's going to be fine. But if it doesn't exist with such as query by text is safer because it's not going to bomb out, I don't believe. It should just be fine. What is Netflix? Let's get this. Actually, let's copy that line. And then expect container.firstChild to match snapshot. We can run this. Okay, unable to find element with text. What is Netflix? Okay, that's probably me. Has to have a question mark. Let's see if that runs and passes. There we go, we've got a snapshot. 100%. Cool. So that's the accordion. And you see it'll cover the styles as well, simply because you're pulling them into the accordion or whatever compound component you're using. Okay, so let's test the card. So the card's going to be a fairly big one. So how would we go about testing this? Well, firstly, let's go ahead and create a test file. In here, components, card.test.js, import React, and then import render, fire event from testing library React. Then import card, and we want the player from components. And then we're going to have a const of category because we want that to be series. And then we want some slide rows. So I'm just going to paste in some slide rows. You can grab these out of either the GitHub or, well, the GitHub repo, or you can just make them up like I have. So I've done exactly how this filter, what's the filter called? Selection filter. So selection filter. So this one basically was going to copy this mechanism where you have a title and data, and we're going to have the selection filter format, so you have the title and data, and that's what we kind of want because it is going to be used in our assertions. So for our card, we can do describe, we'll say card, it renders the card with populated data. I'll come down here, const container get by text render, and we can be cheeky again and go to the browse container. Let's find the card. So we're going to start out with the card group, and we can just take all this. Put that in there, and then we can do some assertions to make sure that the data is showing up. So we can say get by text. Documentaries to be truther. Expect get by text Tiger King to be truther. and then we'll just put Tiger King description because that's what we have up here. Tiger King description. I haven't done anything fancy, I've just used the Tiger King description. And next we can look at a few others, so we can make sure that the genre feel good is in there. We can make sure that Juno is in there. And then we can make sure the Juno description is in there. And then we can do a snapshot with container.firstChild to match snapshot. Cool, so where do we currently stand? Do they pass? They do pass, that's nice. Right, so let's have a look. So we're at 85%, it's just a feature doesn't show. So let's take a look at how we can do modifications to the feature so we can test it. So the next one, we want to basically do the same thing. So if you like, you can just go up here and copy this card, paste it here, renders the card with populated data. I'm going to say renders the card and clicks the card feature and toggles the card feature. Okay, so once you've done that, basically what we can do is we can remove a few of these expects. We can say expect get by text. Actually, we need query by text here. Let's query by text just in case it doesn't exist. And I just want it to continue on with the assertions. Query by text. Query by text 18, and then fire event. Dot click. Actually, do we? I need some test IDs. Let's have a look. Get by test ID. Okay, so we need the test. We need to basically play around with some test IDs here. Let's have a look. So get by test ID. We don't currently have a test ID on here. So as you would expect, it's going to fail. So get by test ID, Tiger King item feature. I'm sure we don't have one. No, we don't there. Let's see. Where would we want to put this item? That's what I'm trying to think, because we need to put it on the item itself. You could put one here, I guess, if you rendered one out. Let's see what we get. I'm sure it's going to fail. It doesn't even exist. There we are. Toggles the feature. So what we could do on the loop, we could add data test ID equals. Let's have a look at the seed file. So we have the slug, so I'm going to do item feature. Item, what was it called? Item.slug. So item.slug, and then we'll just put feature on the end. Then we should have a test ID. Item feature, let's call it. Item feature. Okay, so let's do expect query by text. So we expect Tiger King to be in 18, of course. Let's see what the documentaries are up here. Yeah, so the slug will come down as Tiger King, which is good. And I think that should be enough. I don't feel like we have to put it on the actual component because we're just testing the UI aspects here. So that should work, and we can do the same now for, well, let's actually close the, let's do a click to say get by alt text. and we can look for the close button because there's alt text on there. So then we can come up here and say get by alt text, and then head back down, and then what we can do once we get the get by alt text, we can fire a click on that particular button and it should close it. Query by text 18 to be falsy, so it's no longer, the feature's no longer open. Okay, then do an expect query by text PG to be falsy. And we can do a fire event to click get by test ID Juno item feature expect query by text PG to be truthy. So someone's opened the feature once you do that particular mechanism, so that should work fine. And then we can grab the close, so we can get the get by alt by text expect query by text PG to be falsy. Then expect container dot first child to match snapshot. Let's see what the test runner is saying. Hopefully we get some passing tests, and we do not. So query by text is failing, received null. The card is 88. Line 112, query by text 18. Oh no, that should be falsy to begin with because it's going to be closed. It's closed by default, so you'll get no maturity coming through. And the snapshot's written, the test are passed. So have a look at that snapshot. Card. Tiger King description, and there it is. Cool. Let's take a look at what we got in terms of statements, branches, functions, 100%. Perfect. So the card one is done. It's pretty easy, right? It's not too hard. So let's continue on. We can test all our UI components, and we should be in a good position to, I think we can get 100% for these, but let's take a look. Okay, so let's go ahead and test the feature. It's not too much to test inside the feature, but if we go ahead, create a new test file, call this feature.test.js, import React, import, we only need the render for this one, it's not very hard to test from a UI aspect. And then import feature from components. And then do a describe, and let's call this feature. And then we can say it renders the feature with populated data, because all these components are just kind of dumb components. They don't do anything unless they have data. And we choose get by text, and it's quite nice. I like that. It's separating itself from any sort of business logic. Feature.text. Feature.title, unlimited films, TV programs, and more. And then we'll call this subtitle. I'll say watch anywhere, cancel at any time. So where do we use this? Well, it's on the home page, right? It's in the header, you know, the huge header. That's all it is. It's just a nice feature component. And let's take a look. The render's here inside the iteration, so we can just put expect get by text, copy this, put it in there to be truthy. Expect get by text, watch anywhere, cancel at any time to be truthy. Then expect container.firstChild to match snapshot. Okay, so that's running. Let's see, any errors? None, so that's good. Scroll down, features 100%, but let's just do one more for good measure. So we can copy this one, come down here. It renders the feature with just a title, so we can get rid of subtitle. and we can say to be falsy. A damn magic mouse. See if that works. Here's a good example with get by text and query by text. You see here, unable to find any element, and it's going to bomb out and fail. So you need query by text. So we need to put query by text on this one. We're expecting it to fail, but it should pass. Or maybe not. Yeah, it does. There we are. So that's good. Right, and we can just test this also with just a subtitle, see if it works with just a subtitle. With just a subtitle. So get this, put this here. Oops, oops, oops. Just get the title from the first one. Come all the way down. Replace the title. We can put this one to be falsy, and then this one to be truthy. And then switch out the query by text because it'll do that. It'll give you a failure. See? There we go. Cool. So the feature should be done if we take a look over here. Pop in. There we go. That looks good. Cool. So the next one would be form. So let's take a look at how we can test this form. Right, so this one's going to be a little harder. Close that down. Let's create a new file called form.test.js, but it should give you the basics as to how we can start mocking out modules, or at least packages, depending on what you want to call them. Testing library React, input form from components. And then what you want to do here is you want to, if we look at the sign in, you'll see, actually, do we even need this? Let's have a look. I don't know if we can mock that out because we're testing the UI component, and if we look at the form, oh, we have a link. The link will be a React router component, which basically means, yeah, we're gonna have to mock this out just to make sure. But I'll show you what happens without mocking. Hopefully it gives a good example. So let's say it renders the form with populated data. And if we go into the sign in, we can be a bit cheeky and we can steal the form. Thank you. And let's just have a look now. So we've got the title, which is what we need. We don't need the error. We can test that later on. So for these like on submits, basically you can just get rid of these because they're getting spreaded by the application and they're not being tested here because we're testing the UI components. When we come to test them on the page, we will have to actually look at how we can do that. For the on change, again, that's not something that you really need, but if you wish, you can just go ahead and say on change, just give me back an empty object. Placeholder we can keep, we can do an assertion on that. Value here for the password, not really needed. For the on change again, we can just go ahead and return an empty object. Autocomplete, don't really need that to be honest either. The submission, all we really need is we'll put disabled on there so we can test that it falls into a disabled state. This looks good, so the input looks good. Right now, new to Netflix, sign up. We can keep that. We can keep the reCAPTCHA on there. So let's first start out with the reCAPTCHA. So the first one would be expect get by text. So, ooh, hold up. We haven't done the render. So what we need to do, we'll say container. We need that so we can do the snapshot get by text, get by placeholder text, because we're going to be checking that the placeholder is there. Bring the render closing tag right down to here, and then move this up just one level, so it's going upstairs. bring that down. We can make sure just that works currently to begin. Does it work? Oh, you should. Yeah, there we are. That's good. That's good. Invariant failed. You should not use link outside of a router. So that's a strange error because it's expecting the link, as it says, to be with inside some router, and we're testing the UI element, so it's not going to be hitting the app. So what you have to do, come up here and do jest.mock react router router, whatever you want to call it. If that reruns, it should work. Should work. There we go. Cool. So what are we hitting at the minute for the form? 94. So UI elements are fairly easy to test. It's when you start playing around with data, playing around with Firebase. So let's say expect get by text sign in now to be truthy. And we'll say sign in, that we expect that to be there too. We expect sign in dot disabled, which is this here, the submission, to be truthy. So you can check that's disabled. And then we can say expect get by placeholder text email address to be truthy. And we can do the same for the password. And now let's do a snapshot to match snapshot. So hopefully this works. I get the assertions in there. Unable to find the element signing now. Okay. Did we have signing now? Change this here because it's going to find two variants. It'll find the submission and it'll find the title. So let's just change the title to signing now. Let's see. So I have a snapshot. That's good. Let's check how we're doing in terms of coverage. Come on, let me go back. Okay, so we don't have the form.error. Let's go ahead and test that. So this is quite a big one. I don't recommend that you go ahead and type these out, but we can basically just get around that. So we'll say renders the form. So we'll do a small form here. We're not going to do a big one like we just did with an error. So let's just say there's an immediate error. Const container get by text query by text equals render form.error. Your email address is already being used, and then we'll just have a submit on there, form.submit, and we'll put the type to submit, sign in, and then down here we just basically want to check if this text exists. So we'll say expect get by text to be truthy, and then expect query by text sign in dot disabled, make sure this is not uppercase, dot disabled to be falsy, and then we'll do a snapshot container dot first child to match snapshot. Voila. Oh, it can't find it. Oh, that's uppercase. It's nice having this automated test suite just running, so it's just running each time. Now, I found when you get over 1,000 tests, because I've worked on fairly large projects, that you pretty much can't run that because it dies. There we go, so the form has been tested. Or at least the UI elements, and then the header may be a big one to do, so maybe we can look at doing the Jumbotron next. The header has some complexity that we definitely need to work with. The opt form, I don't think that's going to be too bad. We could probably do that, get a quick win off that one, to be honest. The player got tested in the feature, I believe, or the card. Yeah, the card, it got tested in the card, but we can still cover it if you like. So quick one here. Let's just close this down, close that one, and let's do the opt form. Import React. Come on, give me React. Does anyone else's VS Code sometimes run fairly slow? And then from testing library, and then input opt form from components, describe opt, come on, describe opt form. It renders the opt form with populated data. And then we'll say const container get by text, get by placeholder text equals render opt form. I'll pass some children here, opt form.input, placeholder, set email address, and then opt form.button, try it now, and we'll have the break so we can cover that too. Opt form.text, ready to watch, enter your email address, enter your email to create or restart your membership. Exactly what you see on netflix.com. So let's go ahead and test this. So we can say expect get by text, try it now to be truthy, and then the next one, ready to watch, we can just put that in there, and then expect get by placeholder text, email address to be truthy, and then create a snapshot, expect container first child to match snapshot. And does that run, and do we get coverage on the opt-in form? Hopefully. Oh, we have a snapshot, so we know it's working. Let's go have a look. Here we are, opt form. Zoom in a bit more. Opt form, 100%, perfect. There we go, all green, just as we wanted. Zoom out a bit. So what could be next? The player was an easy one. Whether we test it or not, it's do we test it? Okay, quickly, let's do the player one because it's fairly easy. Player.test.js. Oh wait, did we already test a player? I'm losing my mind. Okay, so we already tested the player. It was the first one we did, but it also got covered by the card, which is good. So the player's done. The profile could be next, I guess. Let's have a look at loading. I know that's a bit of an annoying one to do because function.release body. Actually, let's take it loading. Let's go ahead and do that one. Loading.test.js, import React. Maybe. Import, I think it's dying. React, and then we'll say import render from testing library. Import loading from not loading, components. Cool, and describe loading, it renders the loading component. And then we say const container get by test ID equals loading render loading source. We can pass just any image, we'll just pass a fake image here. Data test ID equals loading, close that down, and then what we can just do is do some assertions. Get by test ID loading to be truthy, and then we'll say loading picture. We expect that to be there, I think. Do we? We're gonna have to work with that one, so we may have to make a small modification to loading. So within loading, what you want to do is we need to add a test ID in here because we're not directly accessing the picture, but then again it should render that one out. But I want to do some assertions on this and I can't really do it because there's nothing to assert on. So let's add a data test ID equals loading picture, and that's within the loading component. Okay, So now we've done that, let's go ahead and write a snapshot. So we can do expect container.firstChild to match snapshot. Okay, that looks good. Let's see what happens. Seems to have passed. Let's do one more here. I was just it renders the loading.release body because we haven't covered that, because we haven't called it. Const container, so we can have a snapshot again. And there's not much you can really do assertion wise for this one, to be honest. Release body data test ID equals loading. I mean, we can just expect it to be true, and then get by test ID, and then down here we can expect container.firstChild to match snapshot. Okay, let's head over to loading. Did that run? It did, I believe. There we go. And did we have a failure? We had a failure. What was the failure? Unable to find an element. Release body. Ah, the release body will go. Okay. Unable to find element loading release body. The release body loading. It's basically just a style component. There's no way I can really do an assertion on that, apart from just making sure it matches a snapshot. That's fine, that'll do. Let's see. It's a bit of a weak test, but it will do. If you was creating a UI library that's used by thousands of people, you probably want to test it a bit better, but I feel that's fine for what we're trying to achieve. Next, let's take a look at profiles. Okay, so let's test the profiles. Create a new file called profiles.test.js. Come in here, import React, do import render from testing, library React, import profiles from components, describe profiles. I'll say it renders the profiles with populated data. Okay, so let's search for that profiles. We can probably get away with yeah, let's just grab this from profiles, which is in the containers, and go ahead and hit this microphone. Yeah, make sure that we don't really need this on click, to be honest. What we can do, again, we can just return an empty object. So let's just return an empty object here. Let's see, there we go. And then for the picture, we can just make something up because we're not going to pass a user in. We can just pass in a fake string. Then add a data test ID so we can test for the profile picture. Display name, let's just put that to Carl Hadwin. That looks good. So now we can do some assertions. So let's test that. Expect get by, did I get the render? No, I didn't again. Okay, so in here, just do const container get by text, get by test ID equals render. Take this and I'll chuck it here. And then get by text, who's watching. Move that upstairs a bit. Then we'll do expect get by test ID profile picture to be truthy. Then expect get by text Carl Hadwin to be truthy. and expect container.first child to match snapshot. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Is that working? Yep, that's all working. So let's create another. It renders the profiles with populated data